Yeah, thanks. Okay, guys, we are ready. Euclides is here, so we're kicking off session number 1. It's going to be session number 2, but the first real session. It's going to be about problem 1.0. We have Euclides here, Euclides Major. He's a serial entrepreneur. You already heard about him in the last session, and he's going to dive with you deeper into why is it important to first establish a problem statement before jumping into solutions. Okay, and this session's goals for today. So first we have Euclides' talk. It's going to be around 20 to 30 minutes with Q&A in the end, and then afterwards we're going to jump into some of the tasks, and then we will try to take a lot of these goals. Okay, first define your problem. Second, define your customer segment. And third, prepare the first customer interaction, which it would be great if you could try to have these first customer interactions between this session and the second session, okay? It will be hard, I know, but I'm not talking about lots of people. I'm just talking about 2 or 3 people that you just had a informal chat with, and you try to understand a little bit better their point of view on the problem, because as I said before, solving a problem is the most important thing. The number one reason why startups fail is because they don't have any market need. So if you're tackling a problem, you at least make sure that there's also a demand, a need for that. Okay, so this is the most important thing that I would like you to focus on in the first 2 sessions. That's why we have 2 sessions about problem. And then afterwards we'll dive into the solution, problem, solution, fit, etc.
Well, hello everyone. Hi guys, again. So today is the first session. I'm delighted to be here. I was also in the last session, last edition of Jump, the previous semester. Was, I think, a great success, having a lot of students here, different backgrounds, different ideas. And the aim of these edition is really to provide you with very practical tips on the startup journey, and so feel free to ask questions. We're gonna try to have a little bit of a lecture, or more just to give you some overall guidelines on the different topics. And today's session is actually one of the most important, because everything in a startup starts with the problem. We really want to understand what are we doing, why are we doing that, and how can we really understand what is the problem that we're trying to solve. So if all of this session can summarize into one sentence, would be this one. Would be, I would like you to think deep on what are you building and why is that, all right? Why is it relevant, your startup proposition? Why is it important for you to solve that? And why do you really want to focus this for the next, 10 years, if you're really keen on deep diving on this startup journey, which is the average time of the startup takes from the very early stages to being a big success factor. But before that, let me just tell you very informally, don't need the slides, well, very informally, let me share with you my startup journey, which has started about 10 years ago. And as Julian said, I've started a few different companies on the B2C, business to consumer, on the business to business, software as a service. And I think it's important for you to really understand what was the journey, and feel free to ask me questions. All right? Sounds good? Cool. Just to have a feeling, what is your startup idea about? Can you just, each of the groups can just quickly tell me? What's your idea about?
It's like a car sharing thing for surfers who live far from the beach.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Like coordinate the trips.
Cool. So like Airbnb for...
Yeah, do you know Vivid Blade?
Yeah.
It's the same, but
okay.
Thing, yeah.
All right, cool. Very good.
My idea is to create some kind of program to fight the negative effects that technology would have on the unemployment and the people that don't have the necessary skills for face that problem.
Cool.
My idea is a platform for universities/schools like Moodle, but with more embedded features.
All right.
My idea is like masterclass.com, but for live events. So it's a subscription model for personal development live events.
All right. Mm-hmm.
My idea was events in Lisbon or Portugal, not specified yet, but where anyone can buy tickets, just overall events, parties, anything, all in one app.
But like Eventbrite or like?
Like events, like, I don't know, clubs, parties, anything really. It's not, still working on it.
All right. Cool.
Yeah, more like a financial system for transactions of funds and money and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yes.
For me, it's like getting food from local producers in Italy, which are like not well known and sold to just to other businesses. Brandize the products and sell them like somewhere else in like new markets for those.
Mm-hmm.
Like this.
Cool. Yeah.
An online service of laundry that you can hire on yourself.
Like Uber, like
Uber for laundry.
laundry services. Cool. Yeah.
For me, it's I guess like urban farms as an alternative to disconnect, and so like we're installing rooftop urban farms for people to have an opportunity to actually go and reconnect with how food is grown.
Very good. So, yeah.
My idea is like a comprehensive, easy-to-use pension planning targeted at millennials.
Nice. Very good. We had a team working on a similar space last edition. And you, Prof. Dave? Yeah.
My idea is to start up at the
Okay.
MVP stage and we're making a crowd-investment platform for eco-housing and nature. That's all.
Very good. All right, cool. So very diverse ideas here, B2C, B2B. That's very cool. So, I mean, regarding my startup journey. So I started, first of all, I studied economics here like 15 years ago. I finished, it was nothing like this. It was in the previous campus. To be very honest, when I graduated, I had no idea of what I wanted to do next. But for some reason, I ended up going into finance and consulting. So I've worked in Portugal, for a big consulting firm that you all know. Then I moved on to London to work in Canary Wharf for financial services. So I was doing advisory services to banks. And I worked for Standard & Poor's, a big rating agency that also does consulting, in very, very interesting times. So before the big crisis, you know, the 08 crash and the Lehman Brothers and so on. And then after that, I decided that it wasn't really what I wanted to do. So I decided to go and study an MBA at IE Business School in Madrid, Instituto de Empresa, for the ones that know. And after that, I decided to kind of start on this startup journey. So the first company that I launched together with my partners was in the tourism space. Okay, so that company, we started very small. There was nothing around entrepreneurship as today. Okay, this was 10 years ago. I guess not even the word entrepreneurship in Portuguese existed. Downtown was very, very, very dark and not a very safe place in Lisbon. There was nothing happening there. But we realized at the time that we had a lot of similarities with San Francisco. Okay, so we started to look what was happening there, what was the cool ideas that were coming out of there, and we realized we saw these little yellow convertible cars, a three-wheel car called go-kart tours. Okay, so what we did was we approached the guys there. They were actually on the cover of Time magazine, like one of the coolest inventions of the year, and we thought, hey, can we talk with you and just understand if there would be any possibility of bringing that business to Europe. And that's what we did. So we basically started go-kart tours in Lisbon. We thought we were like solving a problem in terms of providing a different alternative for tourists to explore the city. And then we had actually, the first times were very, very interesting. For summer, a lot of rentals and so on. And then it came the winter, right? So winter, imagine you being in a store in January, doing no rentals at all, having the fixed costs there. and really struggling to even sell €1, right? So we started to understand, hey, actually this is a nice little business in summer, but then with the winter, seasonality just kills you, and we need to reinvent ourselves, and we need to figure out a way to actually have a stable company. So fast forward to today, in 10 years, we've built one of the largest tourism animation companies in Portugal and Spain. We employ 120 people in this company. We have 14 different brands of cool experiences to do in the city. And it's mostly about organizing group team buildings, okay? So imagine Facebook, when they came here, they did like a European group event, or Vodafone or L'Oreal or one of these big corporations. They come to Lisbon, they have 500 people, and they have an afternoon to have fun. So we can offer them a full package with up to 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 passengers at the same time, combining our different means of transport. Obviously, we still have the go-cars, the little yellow convertible cars, but we also have electric tuk-tuks, that you've probably all seen in downtown Lisbon, right? We have Segways, we have electric bikes, we have the Beatles from the 60s with a little bit change. We have Escape Hunt, which is these escape rooms that you have 60 minutes to escape that. We have operations in Porto, in Madrid, in Lisbon, and then we also have a tech arm, which basically provides the op-on and op-off tours of New York City. You know, the typical Grey Line and city sightseeing buses that you go there and you buy a ticket and you go on a tour. We are the enablers of that technology, okay? So they use every day these GPS guided tours using our own technology, okay? So this was my first company. I can obviously tell you some things on the tourism side. There's always some experiences related to tourism, so obviously some things to share there. Key lesson was, I think we were lucky as well to really adapt and say, everyone, when I'm presenting this, everyone thinks this is a B2C company, when actually most of our revenues come from the B2B side, okay? By doing what we do is, we serve the agencies, it's called DMCs, Destination Management Companies, that organize these very big events, and we do 1,500 a year, and that's the majority of our revenues, more than just renting out directly to the consumer. We also have that, but actually August is no longer our highest revenue month. Second company, we started, this was about 6 years ago. We saw an opportunity at the time of this discount website. There was like a very fast and big boom around Groupon, Let's Bonus. I don't know if some of you might recognize these names, but Groupon was at the time the fastest growing company ever. So the fastest one to get to $1 billion in revenue, okay, ever. Now it's actually the Kicksurus, but at the time, this was about 6-7 years ago, it was the fastest growing. And we thought, okay, we really didn't like the voucher concept, the thing that you were buying a discount, then you had 6 months to use it. So we tried to redefine that experience, and basically we built a mobile app, which was a marketplace for local services, restaurants, spas, beauty salons, experiences, to go there, self-service, advertise the low peak periods, and then as a user, you could actually book it instantaneously, and you would pay directly to the merchant, so not having to print no voucher and to discuss what was the availability. With this company, we got some traction, raised some money from institutional investors. We got around 250,000 users in Portugal. We did a lot of hustling with newspapers. We were able to get like 5 minutes on prime time on national TV in 2 different channels, just due to us hustling, just calling the guys there, calling SIC and the TVI, just really insisting and pushing them to make a story on this startup. And we got around 10,000 merchants advertising in this platform, okay? Then, once we got into Spain, we started to operating in Madrid, and we completely We did a lot of mistakes there, and we completely didn't understand what was the market about. Okay, we launched there, we spent a lot of money there, but then we realized we had 4 competitors investing each one 1 million in digital ads per month. Okay, 1 million a month. And then I was talking with some investors there, and they were asking me, like, but are you aware how competitive this market is? I'm like, well, I thought there was some competition, but actually I had no clue the amount of money that was being invested there. And so later on we had to just let it go. We decided to leave the Madrid market, the Spanish market. We came back to Portugal, stabilized the operations, and then I later sold my stake in that business. That business still exists, but the most important part here is, again, a lot of learnings, B2C, B2B, and how to really, all these dynamics on user acquisition, what are the key strategies. I think maybe if you guys are interested, we can talk a little bit about that. Third company. So third company is called Guest You, and this was the one that I was leading as a founder and CEO for the past 5 years, so 5 to the last year. I spent 4 years there. This was a software as a service for hotels. Okay, so we basically we had some technology in this first company, in the tourism one, doing like GPS guided tours and building a back office that would enable us to build a white label mobile app in Android and at different points of interest. And then we started to understand we have this amazing technology. Maybe we can use. We started being approached by competition, saying, "Hey, is there any way so that we can use this technology?" And we thought, well, we're not going to sell in terms of tourism animation, but maybe there are other size verticals that we could use it. And so we decided to focus on hotels. Again, really try to understand what was the problem that you as a user would feel every time you go to a hotel. And I personally, I felt at the time I was traveling a lot, and every time I would go to the front desk, ask for information, and all of the time they were just giving me a paper map, saying, "Hey, we're here," literally designing this cross, saying, "Hey, we are here. If you want to go to downtown, you need to go left and right and whatever." And I think in most of the hotels it's still like that, right? So, it's literally pen and paper. It's a very weak connection and very weak feedback between the owner of the hotel and the customers that are there. And one of the most important things in the hotel is actually their online reviews. Right? I mean, if you have two similar hotels on Booking.com in terms of price, which one would you go? You would focus on the one that has the highest rating, right? So it's very, very important. Customer experience does matter, does imply on revenue of the hotel. And so we built a product to basically solve these needs. With this, we started selling white label mobile apps. We then had to do a lot of pivots because we weren't really solving a big need of the hotels. And I think that one was one of the key lessons. And regarding this topic of today, I think it's important, which was initially we started selling a lot of apps. I mean, it was relatively cheap. We had a good sales machine in place. And actually sometimes it's very tough if you don't sell anything, then it's very easy, like, okay, I need to change no matter what, right? If you actually do some sales, but not enough to actually scale this to a larger business, then you're like, okay, I'm not going to abandon these paying customers, but I feel that I'm struggling to actually to really evolve the company to really grow. And it's literally, when you're feeling a lot of problems scaling that, it's very, very challenging, and you really need to understand how can you scale this into doing, 1 million in revenue a year, then to 10 million. You need to have clear path to these different milestones. So with this company, what we ended up doing was, at the end of 1 year and a half, we had around 150 customers worldwide, different hotels, and then we needed to say, hey, we need to change this, because the money that we're making is not enough for our unit economics to work. Okay, so the cost that would cost us to acquire a new customer, it was super expensive for the money that we were doing there. So what did we do? we changed we did 3 pivots, so strong changes in direction. And then for 1 year was very, very tough. So we had about 60 people in the team. I had to fire 50 people in 1 day, which is clearly the worst day in terms of the working life that I've passed, and it's very, very, very challenging. And but then I basically gathered the team there and say, hey guys, we are 10 guys. I mean, we still have enough money in the bank to really make this last shot. Let's focus. Let's understand how can we improve that. How can we solve that problem? And we later found a way to actually do a very strong shift, and the business started to work. What was that? Well, basically, we realized that it was mandatory by law that every hotel room has this landline phone, right? You've probably all been in these rooms. These old landline phones, probably no one really uses it, but it's actually a cost center for the hotel. Okay, so what we did was we started replacing these phones with a smartphone that was locked to our own application, and with that, we were able to jump the engagement metrics like day and night. Okay, we were having like about 5% of guests would use the mobile app. With this new version, almost half of the guests would actually pick up and start using that. On average, the guests would use that for over 1 hour. Sometimes to call home, because we had like free Vibe calls. They would call to Brazil, for instance, for half an hour for free. That was their main use. Another ones like to save battery, to use Google Maps, to use whatever. But the fun part was we basically were able to really kind of leverage the engagement, solve the cost center of the hotel, and with that we were able to sell to big enterprises. Okay, so we were able to sign on customers such as Pestana, which is the largest chain in Portugal with around 100 hotels, Iberostar, one of the largest chains in Spain with around 250 hotels, and a few other big groups that would enable us to really scale the revenues, and that's what we did. So after that, I spent a few times doing Techstars in Berlin as well, so an accelerator. We can later talk on that around like what are these accelerators, which one is it right for me or not, and is this a funding source or what else? So we can talk about that later on. But the key message there was we were really able to solve that issue, scale that, and then opportunities appear. So we had a term sheet for another round of investment, a bigger one, but we also had a term sheet for the acquisition of the business, which we then accepted, and we sold the business to one of the largest companies in this sector, in the hospitality technology, someone that has already a portfolio of like 250,000 rooms worldwide. Okay, so that was a very fun ride. Was actually great for the team and great for everyone, and I think a very good experience. So then I had to stay there a few months, transition, and then I started another company, which I'm still a partner, which is kind of a venture studio. So we do small ticket investments. We also do test some crazy ideas that sometimes we have. One of them, just to give you an idea, was this. You've all seen these kick scooters, right? Like this Bird and Lime and Cirque, the ones that are around here. We thought of launching these about 1.5 years ago. We actually did the MVP in 2 months. So we had basically bought some scooters from China, had the MVP, had the app, had everything working. Then I realized that all of these very well-funded companies were about to enter the market. So basically, we decided not to launch the B2C brand, and we decided again to flip and to say we're doing logistics for the big companies. Okay, and that's what we're doing. So it's not a VC fundable model or a scalable model, but it's something that you make money from day one. You know how much you generate in revenue, and you know how much you have enough to spend. And I think this again was a good example of if you need to change, don't be afraid. Just test it and just try to solve a problem that you're having. So having said this, today we're going to focus just a little bit on why. I've just prepared some very easy, simple slides. Key messages here are, I'm going to be around. So I've joined Nova Business School. I'm leading the Entrepreneurship Hub. So I'm a colleague of Julian. I'm going to be around, okay? So feel free to ask me questions, whatever you need, just to exchange some ideas. I mean, as I said, last edition was super cool. I'm still in touch with some of the students there. I was, for instance, advising one of the teams. They were applying to YC, to Y Combinator, which is like the top, like the tier 1, the top accelerator in the world, based in Silicon Valley. And Martin, for instance, he was asking me, hey, can you help me out with this application? What do you suggest? What advices? What should I expect? And so on. This just to say that I'm here, ready to help. I'm here really to help you guys. And don't be afraid, just ask me questions and here to help, okay? Cool, so back to just a very few slides before we're gonna go into more of a practical exercise. And as I said in the beginning, this problem statement, it's very, very important to understand why are you doing each of your own ideas. So if we look at a startup idea, we're talking about an hypothesis, right? I mean, for instance, with the Uber for laundry, right? Idea, right, you guessed that, okay, users probably are willing to pay for extra convenience of that. That is an hypothesis. It can work. Actually, there is a cool startup based in Berlin doing that with some degree of success. And again, this is an hypothesis. We need to test it out. And later on in the program, we'll do some customer validation to really understand if users are willing to pay for the solution that you're presenting. But if we focus on the 3 key topics are the problem, the solution, and the insight. The solution, let me say straight away, because I made this mistake, and then it's a very complicated situation to get out of, is when you have technology, you have a solution in need of a problem, okay? So sometimes you develop this amazing app that has all these crazy, very cool features, but then what is the problem that you're solving? You don't know, right? So you are constantly looking for a problem, and you basically run out of money or run out of energy, or you're just trying to desperately find something to generate money, and that's not a good position to be in. So the problem, when we think of the problem, we're typically looking, when we're describing the problem, typically includes words like there is a growing need of this, like environment, someone here said. Clearly, I mean, we need to address this very, very big problem. This urgent need, this very expensive. Some of you mentioned this. Hey, this is super expensive to do this this way. Maybe there is this new technology that can help me address that. Sometimes a change in law actually opens up a lot of opportunities, right? Sometimes it's the opposite. The law is actually kind of a big obstacle that we need to address when opening up a new business. So these are just some examples of words that could describe, but in theory it should be very, very concise and very straight to the point in terms of describing your own problem. Then we have the insight. The insight means why you, and what is your unfair advantage for you to be the best one executing that idea, okay? Nowadays, ideas, I mean, there's millions of ideas. There's very likely someone else doing that, the same idea, doing the same idea or pursuing the same problem in a different part of the world, or sometimes in the same city. So you really need to understand what is your unfair advantage, okay? Is that because since you are a kid, you're doing that, or you're working, or you were involved with that specific industry, or why is that? Because you have a very deep knowledge on these, data mining, so you're the best data guy to address this issue. So sometimes you need to understand what is your edge, what is your insight that can really provide you a competitive advantage. Regarding the problem statement, so, I mean, the definition, it's a concise description of the problem your startup is trying to solve. It should answer these 3 questions, okay? These would be the ones that I would ask you today to really do a deep dive on your ideas and really try to understand what is the problem that you're solving, who has this problem, and try to be as specific as possible. Like try to put some numbers out, do some research, understand how many users have this problem, and why is this a problem. Okay, why that part of the why? Don't be afraid to ask why are you doing that? Why is this a problem? And then ask back again to that answer. Why is this really a problem? I mean, the more whys you add to the equation, the more deep are the thoughts, and the more interesting will be the value proposition. So let me give you an example of a good problem statement. This is obviously in a very specific industry that I guess none of us are experts, but I think it's a very good statement, very concise, very precise, with numbers that really address. And it goes like 75% of the 1 million plus annual biopsies for this type of cancer produce inconclusive results. This results in a 4 billion loss to the healthcare system and around 8% of patients being hospitalized for complications. So it clearly answers what is the problem, how many people, so who has this problem, and why is this a problem? What's the consequence? 8% of patients being hospitalized for complications. I could give you a ton more examples, can add you one, for instance, in the prop tech, an idea that I was looking recently. And their problem statement was very simple. They were addressing the real estate brokerage fees, okay? So the ones, for instance, Remax and all these big companies charge. And they're saying, hey, the commissions, there are like 200,000 transactions of real estate in Portugal. For instance, in Portugal, then obviously this could be applied to any other country in Europe, but 200,000 transactions in Portugal, paying on average 5% plus VAT. So this would represent around 2 billion euros a year of additional costs that could actually be replaced by technology. Okay, so very, very specific, and if the better you actually have that sentence, the better you can understand how far are you, or how close are you to having product market fit, to really solving a need that is important enough for you to have a business. Does this make sense? Yes? Cool. So after this, what I would ask you, I'm just going to show a couple of more slides, but again, I'll ask you for these 3 questions, so make sure you have that. What is the problem? Who has this problem? And why is this a problem? Okay, so each one of you, please do a deep dive on that. Right, so nailing an effective problem statement has obviously very interesting effects. First of all, solidifies a hypothesis regarding product market fit, making testing iteration cycles faster, meaning this concept of product market fit is a very interesting concept, and it's really about you're actually solving a desperate need of someone else, okay? So that means that it's easy to actually do sales. If you don't have product market fit, it's very tough to actually scale revenues, and you just need to reiterate, to really shift and do pivots and do some different approaches to solve the problem that you've identified. It simplifies the elevator pitch when explaining an idea to family, friends, investors. I was interesting in the beginning. Some of you very straightforward, like what is the problem that you're addressing? 1, 2, 3, that's it. Okay. So the simpler the best. The easier to explain, the best. If you start 5 minutes talking about your startup idea, you're going to lose investors, you're going to lose your friends, you're not going to be able to actually get everyone on board. And most importantly, it gets you to the question every founder should ask, which is, why does this matter? Okay. Again, startup journeys, you're going to hear from other founders as well. These are like, it's not easy. There's very unlikely to be an overnight success. It happens, but it's like once in a billion. So it's actually a very tough journey. Sometimes it's the best thing in the world. Sometimes it's the worst thing. Sometimes it's both in the same day. So it's going to be a very tough journey. So you really need to understand, why do you really want to do that? And if it's because of money, then it's the wrong motivation. I think you really need to be connected with the problem that you're solving so that you can really face all these different challenges. So ask yourself why? Go deep to find your startup core problem. Right, so another comment, this is from Techstars. It's a company's problem statement is its true north. Okay, the best startups have defined this so well that every employee, from the CEO to the intern, knows their problem statement. It attracts great talent, attracts high-profile investors, and it's what keeps you moving when things don't go that well. So the last definition from Lean Ventures, another VC, it's really find your purpose, find something that you are absolutely passionate about, fall in love with the problem, not the solution, again, as mentioned before. If you're focusing on the solution, you probably end up wasting lots of time doing this solution without a problem. We all have many problems, jobs to be done, which is a concept we're going to also look later on. But there are few problems for which we are really willing to suffer for. Okay, so don't just pitch your idea solution. Begin by understanding the problems your early adopters face. Make sure you understand them at a deeper level than your competitors. And that's the core for having innovation. Cool? All right, guys. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Should we make a short Q&A? Do you guys have some questions?
Yeah.
So can I just give you this so that you just can hear? Right, just pass it around like a microphone.
Okay, so this is going to be a bit hard to phrase, but basically sometimes you find that you have a really good idea and it's something that you're passionate about, but the market is not just big enough to grow into a 1 million revenue. But it's still a good market. Like if you're passionate about your idea, you want to go for it, but investors, they just want to see big numbers. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So, first of all, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's a lot of nice little businesses. Okay, the only thing that changes is your approach with investors, and maybe for that, VCs, the typical venture capitalists, like firms that only invest in startups, probably they will not be able to fund you. Okay, there's a lot of other different ways to finance your company. I think that's actually one of the sessions, right? The funding part. If you want to understand why, I mean, from VCs, this is a numbers game. Okay, basically, most of their thesis it's they do like 10 investments. They expect one to really go to $1 billion valuation. So that at the end of the different financing rounds, they have 10%. And then with that 10%, they can pay the full fund and return that 3 times over the period of 10 years. Okay, so it's very hard to be VC. They also need to fundraise. And that's why they cannot go with a company that maximum potential has $1 million in revenue. If it has $1 million in revenue, it's very unlikely that you go to do an IPO. It's any transaction that can occur will be a relatively small number. So for them, it doesn't make sense. Okay, they need to allocate time, resources, and for them, the equation doesn't match. So what do you need to do? Either, first of all, you need to understand, anyway, I'm still very passionate about that. Fair enough, go and do it. Just try to diversify your funding sources. Okay, maybe if it has less risk, then you maybe can go and have debt from the bank. In the beginning of GoCar, we had that. Okay, we did a 30K loan with a Portuguese bank. There is a lot of grants nowadays. You also have a lot of business angels willing to invest that. You have crowdfunding campaigns. You see a lot of them on Kickstarter, Indiegogo, and so on, which are sometimes very cool technology products, amazing ideas, but that most of the people understand, okay, if everything goes well, it's still going to be a relatively small company, okay? But again, there's nothing wrong with that. I also look into those type of businesses, and that's, for instance, the idea I was talking about, the logistics for the Kickstarters. It's not a VC, it's not scalable, it's not a fundable business from a VC perspective. but it's a nice business. I mean, you go until the end of the year, generate a profit, and that's it. Okay, you're creating jobs, you're creating value for different stakeholders. So, what is wrong with that? I think it's still fair, and just go on. Yeah.
Did you quit completely of the life of the banks and consulting things?
Yeah.
And you dedicate just to entrepreneurship?
Yeah. I mean,
nothing like you just quit. Like
no. Basically, so when I started, I was still working for the consulting, and I mean, I was very, very risk averse. I mean, if you're working in a like big consulting firm and so on, I mean, you always struggle. Like, okay, I'm gonna jump through a cliff, right? And it kind of sounds scary. So you just need to figure out, okay, what is that you need to have on your startup to actually make the jump, okay? And sometimes when people talk about entrepreneurs, they say, these crazy guys that are completely risk averse. I'm not that sure. I would say that a smart entrepreneur is a guy that knows how to run the risk, okay? Of course, you're gonna have risk in that, for sure, but you just need to mitigate that. You just need to get as much validation as possible before doing that jump, okay? But then, once you have investors on board, you're gonna be full-time. There's no other way, okay? So from depends on the different milestones, but from one point on, you're gonna be 110% dedicated to that, and then I think there is no way back, right? So, of course, the good part now is that, and we see this from other alumni, is that, I mean, a lot of startups fail, right? But the value that you create, also for yourself, it's super valuable then later in the job market, okay? So most of the founders of startups that have failed, very quickly they find jobs in very, very nice companies and startups and so on. A lot of founders from the big success cases in Portugal that I know from TalkDesk, from Unbabel, from all these companies, they love to hire other founders because they've run the risk, they've run the show, they know what is the culture that they would like to have. So I think you get a lot of valuable skills that can help you mitigate that risk. Okay, but at some point, it's going to be a bit of a belief in you, in the idea, and there's always a struggle. But in the end, I think it's always positive. Yeah.
Amazing path, amazing stories. Thank you so much for sharing these
Cool.
experiences. I have thousands of questions, and I will tell what is most important for me at the moment as
Sure.
I'm making a small company. I know that in Silicon Valley it's common practice when co-founders make an agreement that they don't get any salary for 3 years, and that's okay.
Yeah.
How you motivate, how you organize teams here in Portugal where salaries are pretty low, not many people have some budget or funds or save the money? What do you do here?
Mm-hmm.
Or,
Yeah.
or in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of Portugal, actually we have a challenge in the ecosystem, which is most of us, most of the people, don't really value the stock options plan. Okay, for me it's super interesting. It's super important. I've been in touch with a few of the VCs here that now that I'm connected with the school, they're all the time saying to me, "Hey, we need to evangelize everyone." So that everyone really understands the value of stock options, okay? The employee number 100 of Uber, it's probably a billionaire, right? Billionaire, no, but it's very, has done more money than working for whatever consulting or banking firm, for sure, okay? The employee number 100 of Revolut, still probably the same. So I think stock options are a very important plan. The problem in Portugal is that there's not a lot of people that actually value that. Okay, they see it as well, yeah, it's fine, but all I care is the money, and that's I think because salaries are very low. Okay, and so it's still a very immature or ecosystem that is very still in early stages. But I think it's very possible. Of course, the founding team has to be committed. I'm not sure if you need 3 years for that. To be honest, I feel that most of the startups that have been created here, founders have started to take salary for sure once they raise money. Most of them probably before that, okay? So if I don't have numbers on top of my head, but I would say 6 months to a year, it's okay, you can still survive. More than that, I mean, people need to eat, right? So need to live and so on. So in terms of my experience, I'm all for putting everyone aligned, but I think you really need to find the right motivation, okay? And the early stage team is super important. I mean, the first 5-10 employees that you have are going to be critical, are the ones that define your culture, since when then you have 100 people, okay? When you have 100 people, you can no longer be talking with everyone, and especially if you have different office locations. So I think the first 5, it's super, super important. You just need to figure out a way for them to be motivated, and you really need to put a lot of attention when hiring those first key employees.
It's easier with employees because they are motivated by the idea and about the team of co-founders of participating in something new and something cool.
Yeah.
But it's co-founders are people with huge experiences, very smart guys, who always attacked by proposals from different places and different opportunities. And here, I think that should be something bigger than just motivation of the idea.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's one key skill of the CEO. Okay, the CEO has different roles, and the roles will change during the journey. But one of the first key things, it's really to be able to recruit the right people. Okay, so he has to be an evangelist. I mean, in the sense that he needs to kind of translate confidence and really needs to motivate people around them. How? I mean, you just need to figure out your style and your way of doing it. But I mean, clearly you need to motivate other people to join your vision. You really need to be the visionary, the one that say, okay, this is how it's going to be going to play out. Probably you're going to not match 100% of your idea, but you need to be able to really sell the vision, to motivate the people. Regarding, obviously for us, and I think we're all from more of a business perspective, it's getting harder and harder to actually motivate developers or the engineering talent, because obviously they have tons of proposals every day. And but again, I mean, you just need to find a way. Either he's a friend of yours, someone that connected with your vision, with your idea. It can't be only about money, because you're never going to be able to pay more than Uber is going to pay, or Google, or Microsoft, or whatever. So you really need to find an edge, really need to find a way to just make people believe in you, and then you go from stage to stage, and hopefully we'll get to a point that you can be able to pay that.
So there is no Portuguese specific.
Yeah.
It's common practice sometimes to make a stock option.
Yeah.
Sometimes to stay without salary for a half year.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Up to a year, it's common. Stock options. Of course, after you've raised some money, then everyone expects salary. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
You were mentioning that you were developing this idea kind of for the kick scooters. When you're kind of building something like that, that's new, and that wasn't really in this market before. A, how did you find out that big competitors were coming in, and B, how did you feel, and how long did it take you guys to decide that we're in the wrong space, we need to do something else?
Yeah. So I mean, that's. I mean, when you start having some experience, I mean, you basically just jump faster from stage to stage, right? So what we did was we understood that it was like a very big shift in the US market. So I'd been in Venice Beach in LA. I saw that this is an amazing opportunity. We had a lot of the skills that were needed for that. We already had a big warehouse, a big mechanics team. So for us to implement that would be relatively easy. The tech stack, the technology part was relatively simple. There is no big thing. So it was really about an execution play. Okay. So with our previous experience, we started to approach investors, and we were out on the market very from day one. I mean, I was just telling everyone I met, like, hey, I'm going to launch this Kickstarter, and just talk with lawyers, with investors, with this, with that, so that I know that if someone has some information there, maybe they would call me, okay? I was actually approaching the municipality because we wanted to work with permit, and then through a common friend, let's say, I heard that the guys, and actually were the most well-funded guys in the world, a US player, was about to get in. I still felt, well, there's still space for more than one brand, that's for sure. But what I did was I immediately started to talk with competitors. So actually at the time I met all of the guys from Europe. So I met the guys from Voi, from Sweden. And that's the fun part. In the beginning, every founder will answer your email, LinkedIn, hey, let's have a call. I met the guy from TIER in Barcelona airport. I literally flew to the airport of Barcelona and came back just to meet him. And it's really about that. I mean, just make the connections, don't be afraid. You could be like, oh, I'm not going to talk with that competitor. I mean, don't worry about that. I mean, you go there, you talk, and actually there was some very nice opportunities of things to collaborate and so on. And then what I understood was being based in Portugal, launching a B2C brand, it's very, very demanding, the fundraising, okay? And for me, the key success factor for this model, it's going to be the fundraising. Okay, as it's showing out 1.5 years later, which is either you are willing to raise 50, 100, hundreds of millions, or you're not going to be part of this game anymore. Okay, and you see that all the players that have survived have raised very, very, very big rounds. Being from Portugal, it's an additional layer. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but we got a term sheet of a very low amount. I mean, it's a very big amount for the common thing, but still compared to the other guys, it was incredibly fast. So that industry was very particularly, I mean, if you look, the public sources tell you like Voi raised 3 million in August, 50 million in October, right, 50. TIER raised 2.5, 25 million 3 months later. I mean, in Portugal, raising 30 million, it's going to be demanding at least, okay? So that's why, and then I just thought, well, to do the same with less money, what's the purpose? So then just flip it and then move on. There's nothing wrong with that.
Thank you.
Cool. Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, I wanted to ask, maybe not yet, it's not really much of a problem yet, but like the obstacles that are inherent in taking funding from investors, like because we've had stories of like Silicon Valley, the stories of maybe investors getting tacky and maybe telling actual founders to leave. They need better person to run the business. The business is good, but they don't feel they could continue with the founders and stuff like that. So with regards to taking funding and making deals with regards to letting go a part of your business in exchange for funds, what do you think?
Cool. So a couple of questions there. So the part of raising funds, I would say the number one thing is really to establish connections and relationships with investors. Okay, obviously we look at the investors like, oh, they're sitting on a bag of notes and cash, right? But I mean, they are most of the part. They are professional guys that are managing someone else's money, okay, and the limited partners, and basically they just need to optimize their bets, right? I mean, they have enough money to make 20 bets, and they're looking for these billion-dollar ideas. So you need to first create that empathy and that connection, because really what you're going to be doing is you're almost getting married with the investor, because if it's the journey, if it's a successful journey, it will take you at least 5 to 10 years. And no one really wants to work with someone that you don't connect as a human, right? So number one thing is you need to establish that connection. You need to get the trust from theirs. And I think it's like relationships and networking works, right? I mean, you just go there. I mean, you start having that connection, and then, only then, the opportunity for fundraising appears. I think that's the best scenario. Okay. Of course, the other alternative is you go and pitch to 100 investors. You just get interest from other founders. You go there, you pitch. The partner is super well motivated with your vision, with the problem statement that you're presenting there, and that could be an alternative, okay? But from my experience and from what I see, it's really about these connections, okay? So for instance, now, I've already been in this business for some years. Obviously, I know some investors, and now they invite me for meals, for, hey, let's have a chat. Hey, what are you doing? Hey, what do you think of prop tech? What do you think of this? What's happening there? And I think for that, it gets easier with the more relationships you have. So one thing, invest in these connections, and it's the same if you're looking for a job. I mean, if you know someone from that industry, it helps you out getting that job. So that's one thing. The second part of the question, with the founders being kicked from the board and so on, I think that's a much later stage, typically. But again, it's back to the point that they are managing someone else's money, right? And probably they feel that the CEO is not the best person to get the startup from that stage onwards, okay? Few examples. Uber, CEO, I mean, they were going to the IPO, a lot of scandals around culture and a lot of different topics. And the guys felt, hey, this guy is not he was an amazing founder. I mean, he did build $1 billion business, but he's not the right person to be reporting to the stock market on a quarterly basis as the CEO of a $1 billion company. And there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, you always have this, the Steve Jobs version that he was kicked out of Apple and then he got back and saved the company and so on. But that is an amazing, amazing founding story. But just to the point to say that sometimes the founder and the visionary of very early stages, maybe it's not the best person to scale. Okay. Sometimes there is a misbehavior that leads to that thing. Same with WeWork now. WeWork was SoftBank investors. I think now it's $18 billion in WeWork. Right? It's huge, huge money, larger than a lot of countries' GDP. So they invested such a big amount, and they failed to IPO. And then there is all these scandals and news around this guy is doing this, is selling the brand to himself, is leasing his own apartments, is getting on I think he bought a plane just for himself. Obviously as an investor, you sit on a board and say, hey, maybe I need to change the CEO. But that's, I think, much later down the road. And if you have that problem, I think it could be it's not necessarily a bad one, I think. Yeah. Cool.
So is it like a good idea? Sorry, is it like a good idea to accept funding? Because there are some business owners who don't like taking funding.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, you really need to understand what is your idea path. Okay, if funding can be a means to accelerate your growth, then go for it. But you need to understand that from the moment that you accept external money, they also have they have a say, they have some rules in place. The money splitting part can change because there's some liquidation preferences and some things on the term sheet typically that the first-time entrepreneurs don't really understand. But you just need to understand, okay, can I go alone by myself or with my founding team? Can I realize my vision without having outside money? If you can, why not? If you say, okay, if I have outside money, I can grow much faster, then consider that.